so much, Steve, for doing this interview with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've known you for a long time, and I've always been admired of, not just your knowledge. You've been in the business for so long, but the amount of people that you impacted through your career as a real estate investor. And gosh, you've taught probably tens of thousands of people in your career.
I've been fortunate to be able to say that is true.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I love that. I love that about you, and I love your commitment to always helping people. And you don't just we're here at your office, and you don't just teach real estate. I see all the signs, and you're very big into personal development, making sure people are well-rounded in their growth.
Yeah, we tried a holistic approach, and it has worked. So we have classes on not just building wealth with real estate, but what to do after you've done it, which is we have classes on fitness, nutrition, romance, travel, all the parts of a balanced life. And the members are benefiting from it. This sounds funny, but our members now run up to me and go, I've lost 80 pounds, I've lost 40 pounds, because I focus on, if you make the money and your health, you shoot your health to death, who wants to be the wealthiest person in the graveyard, as they say. So yeah, it's a very balanced program.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, that's definitely a big missing in a lot of programs. So I love that. You used to serve in the Marines.
Yes.
Thank you for your service. That's really awesome.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
That was fun, because there was no war when I was in.
Yeah, and then you quit college. You ran a hamburger delivery business.
Yes.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, I know you have raised between you and your partners have raised well over $100 million in the last, 30 years?
Well, that was over about a 10-year period.
10-year period.
About a 10-year period.
Wow, okay,
Yeah.
That's pretty aggressive. That's awesome. And yeah, you've invested over 4,000 apartment units.
Yes.
Okay, and I know you mentioned too that you're pretty diversified in the real estate, the different real estate asset types. What are the different real estate asset types you invest in?
The three that I'm doing right now, and I don't want to act like I'm objected to the others. At Total Wealth Academy, we're investing in hotels, strip shopping centers, industrial, single family, apartments, self-storage, and senior living. But my comfort zone, because of my knowledge, wants me to invest in what I truly understand, and that is self-storage, apartments, and senior living. So I'm in 2023, I'm going to put about 50% into senior living. I'm going to put 25% into self-storage and 25% into apartments.
That's awesome. Wow. So how did you get started in the commercial real estate? Did you go straight into commercial, or did you start in single family home?
No, I started in single family, first wholesaling, then flipping, then single family rental. And part of it was arrogance. I went, shoot, if I can run these 100 units of single family, should be easy to run an apartment. So I found this little 10 unit, bought it, and it ate my lunch. Because I think many of you can attest to this, apartments run differently than single family, completely differently. If you're good at single family, please don't make the assumption you're good at apartments. They're different. But once I got in there and I stabilized it, which took about 15 months, by the end of the second year I showed a profit, and then I was able to sell it at a profit. And it just made me realize, after I mistakenly sold it for less than it was worth, that I controlled the value of that property. It wasn't the market, it was me. And once I realized that in commercial real estate, you can force a property to appreciate, I wanted all my money in something I had more control in. So that was why I got into commercial.
Wow. That's an awesome story. I know we don't like to learn, especially
the hard way.
The hard way. So how did you get, in terms of your learning process into the commercial space? Did you kind of self-taught yourself, or did you?
Well, my first foray in was self-taught.
Okay.
But again, that proved to be a little bit arrogant. I didn't know what I was doing. And then I took a course, and I believe it was David Lindahl. That was a week-long boot camp And that changed my life, where I went, holy Toledo, if I can raise the net operating income, I control that. That determines the value of the property. I realized that I could go in, focus on helping and serving the tenants, improve their quality of lifestyle, and make massive amounts of money doing it, and I was sold.
That's awesome. And then I know the theme of this interview is that you have raised well over $100 million. Did you ever have that as a goal to begin with?
No.
No, okay.
I didn't think about it. Yeah, that's a good question. And the answer is no. I had no idea how much it would require. Again, part of it was ignorance. I had no idea. So for me, my first couple were little deals where I raised 70 or 100 grand. Then we started raising millions at a time. It's kind of a growth, natural growth that I went through that a lot of people watching this don't need to go through. They should go straight to raising millions. It was just a limiting belief that said, I can only raise 70, I can only raise 200. When in reality, if I'd have asked for millions, I would have gotten it just as easily as I got the 200.
When did that light bulb turn on for you? That's like, yeah.
This kid comes up to me. His name is Trey Stone, probably one of the best operators I've ever seen and best capital raisers. Comes up to me and goes, look, give me some money. I'm going to go buy this 200-unit apartment complex. And I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm going to do it. I gave him the money. He got me literally an 85% rate of return the first year. And it dawned on me that I could do all this without operating it myself. So is that the answer to, is that the question you asked me?
Yeah. Like
Okay.
what turned the light bulb for you?
Yeah,
like,
when
hey,
he did it, it's kind of like when you see somebody that you think, this sounds rude, is not as good as you, and they do it, and you go, holy crap. If they can do it, then what?
I can do
I
it.
can do it. So he woke me up, and then we started working together raising capital, and he always kicked my butt. I would go in, sit down and raise 200, 300. He'd go into the next interview and raise 500, 700, a million.
Wow.
He's extremely good because he's brutally honest. You just can't argue with him because he's so blatantly straightforward. And I picked up a lot of cues from him on raising capital. But yeah, it was watching somebody that I didn't think was as good as me do better than me. And then I realized, man, I'm holding myself back. There's something up here holding me back.
That's great. Yeah. So what's so? I'm sure you've raised money from all different types of investors.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, what is now your ideal investor profile?
I have to, this sounds unprofessional. I have to like the person. I really do. I've been sued twice over the 30 years, won both cases. But if you get sued, it's still 30 grand to defend yourself. I mean, hey, I won. Where's your 30 grand? Gone. Okay? So you don't want that. And both times it was with unsophisticated investors that told me they were sophisticated. They lied to me. And then I didn't get along. They were very money oriented people. Whereas the investors I like need to understand that there's only one way to make money. That's to help and serve other people. And we're buying these apartment complexes to do just that. And our focus is on serving the tenants, not us. We'll get taken care of by default. If we take care of those tenants and they pay their rent, we get paid, period. We don't have to think about ourselves. I want people who think like that. They really are in this to help and serve other people, not just to make a quick buck.
Gotcha. So one of the things I noticed in being friends with new syndicators, operators, because when someone new's coming into the business, a lot of our network are just ordinary people, not necessarily accredited investors. And so it's very common that a syndicator would start out with using 506B to raise money from non-accredited investors. Do you recommend it at all, or would you?
I do.
Okay.
I like to keep it open to everybody,
Okay.
both the accredited, but here's the funny thing. I won't let an accredited person in my deal unless they're sophisticated too. Because the two guys that I ended up in the lawsuits with, they had millions of bucks. They told me they knew what they were doing, but they didn't. I want my investors all to be sophisticated. They should have taken courses. They should understand the deal before they get in it with me, because real estate's what?
Cyclical.
Cyclical. It's up and down. Every time I had a down time, guess what? They're on the phone. What's going on? What's going on? First off, you must not have your TV on. It's a correction in the marketplace. We're still cash flowing. We're just not going to be able to refinance this year. It's going to be 2 years, 3 years before we refi. Okay, that's enough on that.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
I don't want to beat people up, but
Right.
you make sure that the people you take in your deal, if they say they're sophisticated, say, prove it. And they better be able to say, I've taken these courses, I understand this deal. The other risk is, if you take somebody into your deal that's not sophisticated, guess who that's on?
And
You. You're in trouble. That's breaking the law. So you make sure they're sophisticated. And if they're accredited, ask them the same question. Great, you got $1 million in the bank. You could still be a total moron when it comes to investing in real estate. That doesn't prove anything. You make sure they've taken some courses, they understand the ins and outs of real estate.
Awesome. So these sophisticated investors, what would you say is their pain points, or what are they looking to achieve in passively investing into these deals?
You know, oddly enough, it's retirement income is what they're looking for. Because some of them, if they're younger, say they're in their 30s or 40s, they may be just looking for supplemental. But if they're 50 plus, they're looking for retirement income as a rule. So that's the pain point that they generally bring it up with to me, though. I don't have to look for the pain point or bring it up. Mm-hmm. They'll say, look, I'm 55 years old. I only have 500 grand in the bank. I can't retire on that. I have no other income. I need to create some income sources. So there it is. When they're younger, they're going, man, I'm only making 60 grand a year. I've got a wife, 3 kids. I need more income. So there's their pain point, but they generally bring it up to me.
Oh, that's great. Okay. And how do you target them? What has worked well for you?
Well, being a member of an investor group like Total Wealth Academy, I was a member of Lifestyles Unlimited, which is a great company. It was being around people who had paid to be passive investors. It was so easy for me because they had paid 20 grand to learn how to be sophisticated and to be passive investors. So they were serious. They're not playing. They paid 20 grand to see my deals. So when you went to them, they asked you the right questions. They knew the right things to ask. They knew what they were doing, and they'd put up the money.
Now, have you found that because I know as an operator type investor myself, I like to be on the GP side. When we're going into groups like that, I would assume a lot of them want to be on the GP side, not necessarily.
They all want to be LPs.
Yeah. Okay.
They want to be completely passive. They don't want any active operation whatsoever, because most of them have 40-hour-week jobs, some of them 50, 60-hour-week jobs.
Okay. Does that have you mentioned about the age earlier. A person who wants to be in GP or LP, does their age sort of have some of that indication?
No, I've got syndicators in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. I think most people by 60 are out of it. They're purely passive. I think my oldest syndicator is in their 50s.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay. And then how do you position yourself? So let's say you're not the host of
Right.
of the group. You're one of the the people in the attendance. How do you position yourself to gain their trust and show that you're the authority that they would trust the money with you?
I think it was, if you don't have a lot of your own money to say, look, I'm putting up a bunch of money and I want you to put up, if you're putting up $400 or $500 into the deal, that's credibility enough. But if you're not, there's some great stories in here that I heard. If you can walk up to a person and say, I got 40 houses, I'm a hustler, I've accumulated 400 units, that credibility positions you. I'm all about, I don't care about titles, I'm looking at results, and I think my investors look at results, not titles. The only title that is important is CAM. If you're going to do apartment investing, take that little $1,000 certified apartment manager class from the National Apartment Association. It's awesome, awesome.
That's great. Yeah, I was talking to an operator the other day, and he mentioned that he always put in at least 5 to 10% of the LP as an LP.
As the total capital raise.
Total capital raise into his own deals. And I like that a lot. I was like, wow, like that, if he's willing to put his money in, because not a lot of operators are willing to do that, or don't have the resources to do that. So as a new operator, how would you recommend that we compete with someone like that who more seasoned, have the money to put into the deal, to be able to raise money for the deal without?
You got to have a better deal. You really do. I've got a new operator, Alyssa. Why are people investing with her when it's only her second and they're passing up guys with 15 years experience? Because her deal has a higher internal rate of return. She got a better deal for her. So it's these investors going, look, I can go with the new person, but I get a higher rate of return, or I can go with the skilled, experienced person, get a lower rate. A lot of them are willing to go with the less experience.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And then in these groups, in these real estate groups, they're very trained to, that most syndication deals are 30-70 split, right? So like maybe 7-8% prep plus 30-70 split. If we want to get cheaper money, would this type of group still be ideal, or should we go out to a different group?
Ask that again. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So a typical syndication deal, the syndicator will pay a 7 or 8% prep, then plus a 70 split to the LP on the back end. That's kind of expensive. I know it's typical, right? It's common, but it is on the more expensive side of money. And if we want to raise cheaper money than that, what would be another good source to go to find cheaper money?
I think I was just talking about this with somebody, like getting an insurance company to back you. The reason I'd rather pay a higher percentage and get individuals compared to having an insurance company is the insurance company gets up your ass. Excuse my French, but they get up your ass once you're in a deal with them. It's like moving to the dark side. You want to stay on the light side. These families are people that you'll meet and care about, and they'll be on your team for years. Because they won't, if you do a good deal, they're going to be in your next deal and your next deal. We were joking, somebody was joking about this earlier. I've got 50 grand. And then 5 months later they go, I'm going to put $1 million in this deal. You told me you only had 50 grand. They all lie. All of them. If they say they've got 50, just multiply it times 10, that's what they really got. Okay, if they say they got 100, they got $1 million. So I would prefer, even if I gave, like some of the deals were marginal, and I only took 20%, and I gave my investors 80% of the deal. I would rather do that than go in with an insurance company or a big REIT, or I don't know the other types of sources.
Family offices.
Yeah. They just want control. They're not, to me, they're not LPs. They get in your business and they try to tell you how to do it. And I prefer the families that are highly educated, that, for lack of a better phrase, leave me alone and let me do my job.
That's great. So once you start the relationship with them, how do you further build that relationship? How do you, I guess, keep in touch with them, getting them ready?
I can answer that. It's over-reporting. My investors got rent rolls, loss to lease. They got P&Ls every month, balance sheets, everything. I mean, I would get an email from my accountant, and there were 10 attachments, and that was going out to my partners. Over-report everything so that they don't have any questions whatsoever. It builds your credibility. It makes you transparent. And because once you get an investor in one of your deals, it's kind of like moving a tenant in. What's it all about at that point? Tenant retention. Same thing with your investors, investor retention. Because the next deal you do, it's so easy to go back to the ones you already have and collect half of it before you even start raising capital. It's phenomenal. So I use InvestNext, and if you're not familiar with this, you can call InvestNext and tell them you made a change to your PPM, and they'll change their software for you. It's unbelievable.
That's awesome. I know you have a radio show, correct? Do you raise a lot of money from your radio show?
You know, that radio show is to build this company.
Okay.
I don't specifically raise capital off of the radio show. But indirectly, I only raise capital among my members and students.
I see.
So it kind of, it's kind of a long way to get to it.
And do you put out, especially for, part of your relationship building tool, do you put out a weekly newsletter or monthly newsletter?
Monthly.
Monthly.
And what I'll do is I'll tell them everything that goofed up, everything that went right. By the way, do it in that order. Don't tell them everything that went right and then what went wrong, because guess what they remember? The last thing they read. Always throw the nasty stuff up front, and then here's what we did to solve it, and here's the result. But yeah, that monthly report comes with there's a word for it, where you just give a little story of how the company's going, what you're doing to improve this, where the problems are, what your solution is. Yeah, once a month.
That's great. Do your investors, or do you notice most passive investors, do they prefer that the operator focus in on one asset type or multiple, or does it not matter?
Since they're taught by me as a rule, they like to look at multiple. Okay. Like I was describing, the senior living, the self-storage, and the apartment are the top, but they would consider a hotel, they would consider industrial, they would even consider a development ground up if the person's got credibility.
That's great, yeah. So it has a lot to do with where they get their training.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's great. What's your step to go from, knowing someone to asking them for money into one of your deals?
The step for me is an email as a rule. In other words, I've met them, I get them into my portal, I get their email address, and I start off with an email. A very gentle, look, would you be interested in doing a deal with me? If they reply, then I email them the PPM and the operating agreement and let them read it and call me with questions. Okay. And we can either do that Zoom. I prefer one-on-one, by the way. There's nothing like a human touch when you can get it. If somebody just says, I read the PPM, I want to do it, yeah, you don't need a meeting. But if someone's scared and they have 3 or 4 questions about the PPM or the operating agreement, try to get face-to-face. Worst case, Zoom. But don't try to do it over the phone. They need to see your face and your honesty and your conviction, and they won't get that with a phone call.
That's great. Okay, and then how do you? One of the things I noticed the difference between a syndicator versus a fund manager, someone who has a fund. Syndicators, because you're raising money for a specific deal, whenever you have a deal, you're working your butt off for that certain amount of weeks or months to raise that money. versus a fund, right? You raised money already, and so now you're just deploying it. So on the syndication side, how do you position your investors so that way they have their money ready? So by the time I guess how to prep your investors in such a way where you're not having to work so hard when you're ready to take in their money.
I notify them when I'm beginning to write an LOI. As soon as I write that letter of intent, I send it out with the caveat that, hey, this deal may not go through, but I just wanted you to let you know I'm working on something.
Okay.
So I think, again, clear communication as soon as possible never hurts. Then if the LOI doesn't go through, send them a letter explaining why and that you're moving on to another deal. In other words, keep them abreast of everything you're doing. Clear lines of communication is key.
That's great. Do you have a fund, or have you had a fund before?
Some of you aren't going to like me when I say this. I don't like funds.
Oh.
And the reason is somebody always throws a turd in there. Every fund I've ever seen, they have 5 good deals, shit deal. How'd that get in there? Because they were under pressure. I got to get this money invested. We just sold to a fund, a REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust. John Mannes, fourth from the left, buys these 5 self-storage complexes in November of 21. REIT comes to him 9 months later and pays him full price and over. Now, why would they do that?
Because they need to deploy the money.
They needed to deploy the money. The fund puts pressure and it gives too much control to the GP. So I don't like them.
That's the first time I heard someone who don't like a fund. So that's great insight. That's awesome. All right. Do you only raise capital for your own deals, or do you also partner up with other operators?
I have, absolutely. In my there's a bunch of young syndicators here, and I sit with them and train them how to communicate with investors. So indirectly, I'm helping them, but they're actually doing the interviews, and they're the ones, in the office closing the sale.
Okay, that's awesome. How do you vet an operator? What's some of your best tips for like us? If we're looking to invest into an LP, how can we best vet an operator?
Well, if you're a member of a club like ours, then I've vetted them. Most of them I've run credit and criminal reports on, unless I already knew them 5, 10, 15 years, things like that. I get referrals from their past deals. Like all the way at the end, second from the end is Matt Johnson, Senior Living. What I did was I got him to send me a list of 20 or 30 of his investors. Then I picked 3 of them randomly and reached out to them. They emailed me back insanely good referrals. Now, there's no way out of 30 people I happened to pick 3 of his buddies. And again, I look to their past deals, I look to their past internal rates of return, and look at their track record in depth. Now, if you're outside and you're just picking some stranger off of the internet to invest with passively, it's very difficult to do a credible vetting of that person. So I'm not a big proponent of that. But if you are, do what I do. Get a list of 30 of their investors, pick 3 of them randomly, and reach out to them until you may have to pick 6 to get 3 of them to respond. But do not take anything less than 3 referrals.
And most operators would be willing to let you do that?
Yeah. Okay. If they're not, I'd be a little concerned. Why not? Why not? I have had to send an email, and then he sent it out to a list of 30 investors, but he shared it with me, who he was sending it to, but he wanted to control it. And I was fine with that because I got the list in case I didn't feel confident I could email them myself.
That's great. How do you spot a bad operator? So I was talking to a friend of mine who's very conservative in how he analyzes deals and what deals he invests in. He said there's a lot of operators that looks really good on Facebook. Yeah. All these deals that they do, and he said he knows behind the scene they're having to use acquisition fees from one deal to feed the other deal. So how do you spot those type of
Well, one,
operators?
he's right. Never trust social media at all, period. You want to talk to human beings. You want those referrals. When I look at syndicators to come up here and be syndicators, I look at people who are seriously interested in improving the quality of lifestyle of their tenants. If the person just talks to me about how much money we're going to make, that makes me nervous. If they say things that are God, this is tough. There's things that people say that you can tell they don't care, they just want to make a buck. Those are not going to be good operators. They're not. You've got to focus on how you're here to help and serve those tenants. If you do that, you'll be taken care of. If you meet Robert, far left, he's like, we're changing this. We're putting security in. We're putting keyless deadbolts on all the interior. I mean, just everything he says is about improving the quality of lifestyle of his tenant, which increases the rent, which increases the NOI, which increases the value of the property. It's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I even noticed some great operators, they don't even call their tenants, they call them residents.
Yes.
And they're very clear on building a community and supporting the community. So yeah,
Yes,
those
I
kind
agree
of
with
little
that.
language. Yeah. Now you've been through a few market cycles.
Yes.
Right. Especially the last one in 2008.
Yeah.
I remember, that I think that was about my first introduction to the multifamily space, where one of the gentlemen I met back then, after the market crashed, he was able to buy properties from banks that, literally at 50% of what they were loaning, he was able to use hard money, 14% interest to take down these deals because the deals were so good. So a lot of people are speaking about the next market cycle that's starting now.
Yes.
Already. What challenges, so using the last market cycle as an example, what challenges did you see in raising money? Because if people are fearful because of the downturn, there's a high chance that they might be fearful in investing their money. Right?
Yes, I understand your point, but I think it's slightly opposite. What was happening was people were calling me from California, Florida, and they're like, oh, my property values have dropped. One guy had gone from 2.5 million in his IRA to less than 2, and he was like, I got to get it out. I actually found it easier to raise capital in 9, 10, 11, 12. I shouldn't say easier, just as easy to raise it because the people were fed up with the stock market. They're going, man, it's going down again. Here we are. This is 19 times in 100 years. When am I going to realize that the stock market doesn't work? And they would come to me and go, I need my money in something that produces cash flow. So I think you move your target from, let's say you're out there on your own trying to raise capital. You really want to target people with IRAs and 401ks that are in mutual funds and stocks because they're getting slaughtered and they want to do something different with their money. And if you can get a hold of those people and show them how real estate works, they will give you their money.
It's good to know that. So what's your take on where the market is going?
I think we're in a correction. I think for some reason it's going slow though. It's not going to be like this. I think it's going to be a slow drift. And I don't think it's going to be as bad as 2007, 8, and 9, even though we wish. Man. But what everybody needs to be doing right now, if you don't know how to do this, you better be taking classes so you do, because How many of you would hop in a time machine with $1 million and go back to 2007?
Oh, God.
Yes, I knew your hand was going up.
Oh my gosh, all of us.
Everybody in the room, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? It's here. It's here. You just have to make sure you're mentally and educationally ready to take advantage of what's coming.
All right. That's a perfect answer, which leads into my next question. What are some of your favorite tools, resources, in this business?
Well, InvestNext is just, those guys and gals are phenomenal. I spent, before we chose InvestNext, I probably grilled this one girl for an hour and a half because I wasn't getting the answers I wanted. She wasn't an operator, so she couldn't understand what I was asking, if that makes sense. Then it finally gelled, and she explained, she goes, look, if your PPM changes, you call us, and we'll modify the software. I said, I'm sold. So InvestNext is my favorite. I use Zoho for CRM, other tools. I think the biggest is networking, what you guys are doing. You need to pat yourself on the back. This is a Saturday morning. You could be goofing off, watching cartoons, playing video. You could be doing anything you want. But for some reason, you had the fortitude to get off your rear end and come to a meeting like this. Pat yourself on the back. Because I bet you there's more appointments than people here, right?
Yep.
Pat yourself on the back.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, coming into this space and for myself wanting to specialize in capital raising, at first I thought $10 million was a lot of money to raise. And then I was like, okay, I gotta, in order for me to raise 10 million, I have to think a lot bigger, so that way 10 million becomes easy. That's one of the things I do to trick myself when I'm creating big goals, is I find a bigger goal so that the goal that I'm trying to reach is like, oh, that's nothing if I'm starting from a bigger number. And so my goal is to raise $100 million.
Okay.
And one of the ways that I'm going about it to get comfortable, because it was such a uncomfortable number for me to even speak out loud of this is my goal I want to raise. So I've been stretching out of my comfort zone. What are some of the tips that you have, for people like myself who have a goal to raise 100 million or even $1 billion? What are some of the tips that you have for us to sort of overcome that uncomfortableness and like really go out there and take action on that?
For you, I'm going to address you. You have to believe in yourself as much as I believe in you. Because I've known Tim. I've seen what he has done. He could raise 100 million right now. I have no doubt. If he really wanted to. So to me, the first tool that you need in your quiver or arrow in your quiver is believe in yourself. And believe in yourself so much that others start believing in you. Some of you have experienced this. If you ever are down on yourself and you don't feel confident, do you notice that the people around you act the same way? They feel the same way about you. The wonderful thing is the exact opposite is true. If you believe in yourself, you read the books, you put in the work, you get the information, you take the courses, and you have the knowledge, you need to believe in yourself, and you'll be amazed everybody around you will start believing in you as well. Zig Ziglar calls it fake it till you make it, but be real. He's not talking about lying. He's already got that 100 million. It's just not in his pocket yet. Mm-hmm. So believing in yourself is the number one thing.
That's awesome. Thank you for that.
You bet.
Now, you have accomplished a lot in your life. What's your biggest goal when it comes to your career?
Wow. I think if I had a national bestseller that was a true bestseller, because they can manipulate you notice how every book is a national bestseller? No, I want a real one that sells millions of copies, literally is a real #1 bestseller.
New York Times bestseller?
Yeah, where people email me and say, you changed my life, because my biggest reward was, man, I can't tell the story. It's when somebody says you changed their life.
Wow.
Sorry. That my biggest reward would be millions of people emailing me and saying, hey, I feel better about my life financially. I feel better about my future because of what you wrote. That would be my ultimate goal.
I love that. I love that. I've gotten to know Robert Allen, and
He's actually coming up here Tuesday to meet.
Oh, awesome! Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I used his books when I was originally investing, when I was a wholesaler and flipper. I used his techniques all the time, so I'm gonna give him a hug.
Yeah, well, perfect, because I was going to invite you to a workshop that he's doing, because he spoke at a couple of my events that I've done, and we raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for charity. And a part of that is that so part of that fundraising to thank the people who donated it, he has graciously agreed to do a best-selling workshop, how to write your best-selling book workshop. And so I'd love to invite you to that.
When is it? I'm in. I don't care when it is.
Yeah, it's in July 25th and 26th in Utah.
Okay.
So I'll send you some.
I would love to.
Yeah,
love to.
Yeah. So and I tell him all the time too. I was like, I love the difference that you made through the book, because I got started with Robert Allen.
Did you?
Yeah, I sure did. And so, which is one of the reasons why this interview that we're doing is turning into a book. Is that, I mean, it's such a powerful tool, right? And it's evergreen. So like, it could be 100 years later, someone's gonna pick up a Steve Davis's book.
Yeah.
And it changes the trajectory of their lives and generations after them. Like that's the impact that you're out making.
That's what I want.
Yeah, which is, I mean, you're already doing a ton of that right now. Like that's one of the things I admire so much about you. I know your passion for teaching and for mentoring, sharing with others, helping others grow. And so, thank you so much
Thank you.
for that. Yeah. So we'll open up for questions from you guys. Hope you guys enjoy the questions I prepared, but I'm sure I'm missing some other questions you guys might want to learn or know. And so, questions you guys have?
What is a acceptable rate of return for an LP?
The internal rate of return on these deals are anywhere from 20 to about 40. The senior living's getting, I think, 47. But you really want to have an IRR of 20% or above to really draw people to you.
Is that per year?
Yeah, that IRR would be, it'd be 20%, yeah. So it might only be 6% a year the first 2 years, but then when you refi, you get 60%. The average, the internal rate of return is going to be the average of the 5 years you hold it.
Well, I don't want to be morbid, but with the COVID, senior living, majority of them will be passing away. So would that affect your internal rate of returns and all your calculations? Because some of them.
You think COVID is going to, she's asking, let me ask if you're asking
Go
this.
ahead and
go ahead.
The mic. Go ahead.
Thank
you.
Are you thinking that COVID is going to kill off a bunch of them?
Well, no. What I'm saying is it does affect some part, because a lot of their relative will be scared enough to take them out. As you can see, some of the it doesn't affect in Texas, but other states, they make it where it affected a lot, like New York, California, a bunch. I'm not trying to be political, but the red states are different than the blue states. So, as far as investment is concerned, where should we be watching? Because we have to be careful of the political arena when we do investing, right? Especially on senior living. That's what I was asking.
Yeah, I don't see that as a major factor, because we're not speculating about this. This is a fact. The baby boomers start turning 80 in 5 years. So that's not a guess, that's not a probability, that's a fact. And they are going to be moving into these units at tremendous numbers. So I think that's going to overpower anything that COVID could do. You're welcome. Chewy.
Tyler, could you be our mic runner, please? Can I volunteer you? Thank you, Tyler.
First, I want to start before my question by saying, there's a great saying, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And
Yeah.
It was beautiful to see you clearly care, and thank you for showing that side of you today.
Thank you.
And always, But as a dad, it's not easy to get your kids to, like you said, pat yourself on the back for coming up. It's not easy to get your
Yeah.
kids to come up when they could be doing anything else. I want to take advantage of having my daughter here with an important question. I always like to tell my kids, like, we all have fears of making mistakes, right? Just on certain levels. And I always like to say, make 1,000,000 mistakes. Just have 1,000,000 nuggets of wisdom from each fall, right? Fall, like the old saying, fall 7 times, get up 8, right? But if you could look back at some of the biggest mistakes you've made and share with us what were the nuggets of wisdom you got from some of your biggest mistakes, because obviously you've overcome them. And then if you could go back to when you just turning 18 and she's 20, if you could go back to your younger self and impart wisdom with all that you've learned and say, Steve, man, this is the stuff I really want you to know, what would that be?
Great question.
I think it would be 2 things. One, I was horribly insecure, terribly insecure. I was controlling of my girlfriend because I was insecure. That costs you on so many levels. I was insecure, I didn't believe in myself. So insecurity and lack of self-belief. If I could go back to myself at 18 and say, be more secure and believe in yourself, I would also hand myself Unlimited Power by Tony Robbins and The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey. Unlimited Power by Tony Robbins. If I had read those 2 books at 18, I would have probably been financially independent by 20.
Wow.
And then your biggest mistakes in you feel like
Biggest mistakes?
biggest mistakes you made and the wisdom you got from them?
I think the biggest mistake was the one I described where, because of, we call it lag, laziness, arrogance, and greed. What happened was when I bought that 10 unit, I knew in the back of my mind I didn't know how to run it. But I was too lazy to take the course, too arrogant to think I need it, and too greedy to pay the 20 grand for it. And so I lost 349. That's got to be the biggest mistake. The second biggest mistake is not understanding when you're with someone that is a bad person and you know it and you stay with them because you're making money. Big mistake.
That's a big one.
Huge mistake.
That's a really big one. That's a tough one to. It's a hard one to let go of, right? Especially it's like oh man, but the money is here.
Yeah.
It's but that's a really good one.
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah.
Tough.
Can you also share about the teen program that your son is doing, so that way for those here that have younger kids?
Okay, I've got a wonderful story for you. When my son was 7 or 8, I gave him a copy of The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason, and he read it. And I said, he would ask questions like, why do we have a Ferrari? Why do we have a boat? Why do we travel? Why do you have all this time? And I'd go, because we have a second stream of income. Son, you need a second stream of income. When he was 9, I went, you need a second stream of income. When he was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, you need a second stream of income. He graduated college with 11 rent houses and $4,000 a month in second stream of income.
Wow.
Now, why? Because he's more brilliant, harder working than you? Nope, you're brilliant and hardworking too. Were you told at 8 you were supposed to have a second stream of income? No. See, the rich teach their kids differently. And we are doing a class for kids and adults on the 17th. It's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., where you bring your kids in, 13 and up, and we will share with you exactly what we're teaching our kids so that you can share it with your kids.
So it's June 17th?
June 17th, 10 a.m. to 2. I emailed you already, actually.
Perfect, thank you.
No, the kids. But the parents generally come too because you want to be on the same page. You don't want your kid coming home and correcting you. Sorry, Mom, that doesn't cash flow. We're not buying that.
That's awesome. And how young, what's the youngest you allow in the
There's no limit. I make a recommendation, 13 and up, but we've had 8-year-olds in there before.
That's great. And your son is teaching that class.
Yeah, he actually
Yeah.
teaches part of that class.
Okay.
There's actually, I think, 4 speakers. It's going to be and we're going to have pizza at lunch. It's going to be a fun event, but they're going to leave there not with an employee mentality, but with a leadership and entrepreneur mentality.
Love it, love it.
Like for you, what was kind of like the shift that happened? You said you were in the Marines. Did you already have this entrepreneurial trait, or was there like some trigger event, a pivotal moment you realized that I need to be an entrepreneur?
That was the pay cut. When I was, what happened was
credit card
this.
debt.
You have to recognize that everything I was told by my parents to do, I did. Went to college, got a good job with pay and benefits, and had my money in a 401k and IRA, tried to do well at the job. What you got to understand is I had just won a national sales contest. They sent me to Hawaii for a week because I was so good at my job. When I got back, they cut my pay by 20 grand a year. And that woke me up, that depending on a job as your sole source of income is the highest risk position you can be in the United States. The highest. Look what happened during COVID. Look what happened during 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's a high risk position. So that was the watershed moment where I went. And I mean, I said it. I said, fuck this, fuck corporate America. I've got to change my life and only I can do it.
Wow, that's awesome. I'd love to ask you this question because I have my staff here as well. You mentioned a lot about having second source of income. How do you, I guess, sort of teach that to your staff, and especially how do you help them implement that in addition to?
Well, Charlie, the VP, is putting 100 grand into senior living this month. You know, they're not just here playing. These are investors as well. Mm-hmm. So my team of coaches and consultants and operations consultants, all of them, they're investors as well.
Awesome. You guys hear that? 100 grand each in my next deal.
Yep, right here. Oh, I got to say something. You know that some business owners are insecure. Walmart will fire you if they find out you've got a second stream of income. I actually called a guy when I was at the other company. I called a guy and go, man, we got your contract signed on your 24 unit. They fired him when they found out that I made that phone call to him during work hours.
Wow.
He called me up. He goes, hey, Steve, you got me fired. I'm like, oh, my God. He goes, nope. Greatest thing ever happened in my life. So I'm the opposite. I want my employees to not need the job. I want them to be here because it's their passion. And I guarantee my team will beat the guy who's got his employees up to their ass in debt. He controls them through power and debt. No, I want my team members to be financially independent, and they're here because they want to be.
I love it. I love it. That's my goal for my team as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. All right.
Yeah, that's so cool that you guys are here training. I mean, that is so smart.
What other questions, guys? Yeah, so do your members build apartments, develop apartments, or do they just buy existing?
About 80% to 90% would be existing, and maybe 5-10% would be new build. Very, But the point was made earlier. It's almost just the same price to build as it is to buy right now.
Right.
So, but with the dip, we want to be in a position to buy these properties that are already existing.
So with the dip, would it still be a good idea to also build? Or do you think it's more risky?
It depends on the numbers. I can't answer that. Somebody may have the skill set to get it done very inexpensively, and someone can't. They don't have the right contacts, they don't network, but someone who's well networked and knows how to get it done at the right dollar per square foot should do it, no matter what the market is. If the numbers work, the numbers work.
Awesome. All right, we'll take one last question, so Chewy.
Here comes the mic.
So obviously we're always growing, and part of growing, there's fears. You're building this company. Of course, you have a family. You're a dad. What are some of your biggest fears right now that you have to like really get yourself psyched up to?
Chewy, why do you ask these types of questions?
Because we want, like this is the powerful. Like you get inside. The thing
my
is,
big fears.
because there's courage, right? It's like not like the Lion King when the dad tells Simba, it's not about not having fear. It's having the moving forward,
Acting anyway.
and you're courageous. But what are those things that you have to be courageous about?
I think my biggest fear is losing my health. That one is why I train 3-4 days a week. I eat right or clean. I'm not perfect. I had a half a burger yesterday, but just a half.
And we're serving donuts this morning.
And then I brought you guys donuts. I don't care about you.
We had an excuse. Today is National
Donut
Donut
Day.
Day, so we have an excuse.
I think that's my biggest fear. The fear, this is a weird one. The fear of dying before I get that book out and see the results. I don't really have fears about this company. I don't really have fears about real estate investing at all. Those would be the two big ones, losing my health. And this may sound arrogant, but I don't really have a fear of losing my wife because I will do the work, whatever it takes to keep her. We want to take one more because he's got both hands up.
I'm itching to get a broad understanding, and I think it's going to address some of the concerns in the room as well. I think what he was trying to point out or draw
You
out
put
of
your
you-
mic for the.
I think he was trying to draw out of you, like in the market, in the present place where you're at in business and where you've been, what are the things that were challenging you along the way that you still see as a problem forward? That's what he was trying to address in his question. But what I want to ask you is, in your business, how do you look at your everyday operations? Do you come in with a filter of SOP, or do you come in with whatever's thrown at me, I'm going to judge it by what the numbers look like, and I'm going to take the metrics and I'm going to trust the data, and I'm not going to trust what people are saying and what people are looking at. I'm going to align it with what my SOP is, and if it falls in that category, then now we look at what the actual data is in the market concerning the area, because always growth is going to tell you where you're going to be at that 5-year mark, right? What people are doing around it, what other investors are doing that are in the same lane you're in, the same level you are. So you look at all of those metrics and that data, and when you compile it, you put it to your team and tell them we're looking for this. And when we're looking for this, we don't go outside of this. The risk management is what I want to understand. How do you apply that to your business today as you did yesterday? What's changed, and what are you looking for as in to say your future with your business now?
Man, I'm sorry, but I don't really...
Your risk management practices.
My risk management practices. One, I embrace risk. I love risk, and I understand that nothing of value in this world comes without risk. Everything of value in this world requires risk. So I embrace risk. I love risk. How do I manage it? Education. Education, education. If I'm going to go into another arena, then I am going to find a mentor like Tim. I'm going to read every book I can get my hands on the subject. Elon Musk, I was studying him a couple of weeks ago. You know he read 10 hours a day for 3 years straight before the rocket company was started? Now he reads 6 hours a day. It's insane.
Wow.
So Abraham Lincoln said it this way. He said, if they ask me to chop down a tree and I only have, I think it was 4 hours, he said, I'm going to spend 3 hours sharpening the axe. And that's what I do. I'm going to study it. I'm going to make so I feel that I'm making the best decision possible. Data and information, as you put it, absolutely.
That's awesome. So I have one very last question for you. You have been so gracious, so generous to provide us with this beautiful space, the food, the drinks. There's alcohol too, but I don't recommend it this early in the morning.
Oh, it's afternoon.
Yes, you've been super generous with sharing with us your knowledge and your wisdom. How can we give to you? What requests that you might have, what resources you're looking for, how can this audience give to you?
I think that my offer, the $99, those of you that take advantage of that, that is helping me. And you say it's only 99 bucks. No, because some of you are wholesalers and we need more deals. So that is a huge benefit for us. And I also need syndicators that are quality, caring people that really want to make great communities in Texas or outside of Texas. I mean, we've got properties in Phoenix, Tennessee, Florida, and hopefully soon Alabama. Yeah. If you wanted to do something for me, live life to the fullest. Live your dream life. Get out there, read the books, go to the seminars, study the material. Whatever goal you have, there's a book on it by somebody who did it very effectively. Read, study, and get to your dreams.
That's awesome. Love that. Let's give a big hand. This book, this best-selling, New York Times best-selling author book, or best-selling book, that is your goal. Have you written the book already?
I'm in the process. I'm working with Scribe Media,
Okay.
which is Tucker Max's company, if you remember Tucker
Yep,
Max.
yep.
And they are, because I'm a radio guy, I can take 30 minutes of information and get it out in 5 minutes, because that's how long a segment is, about 5 to 7 minutes. So you have to get that idea out in 5. So it's very hard for me to write a book. It ends up being this thick. So Scribe Media is letting me just talk, and then they flesh it out.
Okay.
And it should be out by April of next year.
Perfect. So count me in on the launch of that. I'd love
All
to
right.
I'd love to work with you on launching it and making sure that it gets on the New York Times bestselling list.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
I appreciate it.
All right, let's give Steve a big hand, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you, Tim.
much.
That was awesome.